Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Adjectiveless X-Men number 14, cover dated November 1992, and this is part 3 of the 12-part X-Cutioner song crossover. Cover here by Andy Kubert, inked by Mark Pennington. Andy Kubert coming on board as a series regular penciler, and he would continue on the title as regular penciler until X-Men number 59. So beside the comic here we have the Skybox card that came polybagged with the comic, and if we turn this around we've got text from Strife's strike file concerning Apocalypse. It will be a river of blood which spills between us, master of the forever past, and it will be your ancient congealed dry caked ichor which will splatter the landscape like dry heat, washing me down in its dusty tears of time. And a little insert there of Apocalypse by Larry Strom on a headshot there. So let's take this card away and open up the comic for review. So the splash page here is of Professor X back in the X Mansion. He is in a type of stasis condition, as it turns out it's Hank here, Hank McCoy the Beast, who's working on him in order to try and get a handle on the organic virus that he is infected with. So we get a little summary of what has gone on so far in the previous parts of the crossover. Professor Xavier infected by a techno-organic virus. The man who shot him, Cable, ? Cyclops and Jean Grey kidnapped by the 4 horsemen of Apocalypse. Well, only 3 actually. Caliban, Death, War and Famine. X-Force on the run. The X-Cutioner song continues. So we've got Moira MacTaggert on TV video call, calling in and advising Hank on working on Professor X here. Title of the story, Fingers on the Trigger. The creative team, we've got an exciting welcome aboard to Andy Kubert, penciler, Fabian Nicieza, writer, Mark Pennington, inker, Lois Bahalis, letterer, and Marie Javins, colorist. So if we continue with the comic, we have this video call, as I was saying, with Moira, and we've got Val Cooper here looking from outside, along with Havoc, leader of X Factor, and Storm, leader of X-Men Gold Team. And Val is asking, should they call in any outside help? Reed Richards, maybe Hank Pym. But Storm responds and says, if Moira MacTaggert and the Beast cannot handle Charles's spreading illness, I'm afraid no one can. So it turns out that the virus appears to be self-terminating and self-replicatory. For every probe which finds a way to slow its spread, the virus finds a way to reroute itself to a new cell cluster. So there's no good news here at the beginning. So as the team leaders walk away, they walk out towards the assembled X-Men and members of X Factor. And we've got like a nice anchor image here of by Andy Kubert representing all these different characters, and a roll call of their names as well in the narrative caption. They stand grimly yet with pride, these children of the atom, awaiting to hear the news on their mentor's condition. They represent the dream of Charles Xavier, past, present and future. Bishop, of course, a representative of the future of Xavier's dream. So Storm gives them the news that he's stable, but that's as much as they can expect for now. And then basically Havoc is back on core topic, which is that they need to find Cable because perhaps he has a means of saving him. So they divide into 2 groups, and Beast suggests that he go with the Gold Team because if Apocalypse is involved, Warren, Bobby and I have the most experience dealing with him. So a good call there. And Storm agrees to that, but she also asks that Quicksilver join her on the Gold Team. And the explanation for that is, as Havoc puts it, if it comes down to it, Apocalypse's last base was on the moon. The current residents of Luna are your relatives, the Inhumans, right? So that is Quicksilver's wife. And the Inhumans are his in-laws, and they might need their help on the moon. So Storm says the remainder of you will search for X-Force and Cable, but Bishop says he's going to hang on at the mansion because whoever attempted to murder Charles may try to do so again. I will not fail in protecting him, he says as he draws his gun. Bit dramatic here by Bishop. Kubert going for it in terms of the dynamism of the art, but not really fitting the moment. Bit of a disjunction here. Also a little odd that Fabian Nicieza would script Bishop as referring to Professor X as Charles. It's quite familiar. Bishop's still at this point in awe of the X-Men and of Professor X in particular. So I don't know about that choice there in the dialogue. And then basically the two teams split up gold and blue. And now we have a scene switch to Bocas del Toro, Panama. And we've got members of the MLF here. Reaper here complaining about the heat and humidity. And what are they there for? Well, it turns out they're there for a prisoner exchange. And behind them is the other person involved in the exchange, and that's Mr. Sinister, as it turns out. Nice anchor image here from Kubert and Pennington of Mr. Sinister. And what he's looking for is coming up. He's handing over Jean Grey and Scott Summers in stasis pods, and he is looking for materials from their employer. Their employer is Strife, of course. And Zero ports it over to them, this contraption container here. And Sinister is delighted with it. You can see him hugging it to himself with a big smile on his face. And when Zero ports them out of Panama, Sinister says, "Good riddance to you all, for I've received the better end of this bargain by far. I now have a piece of the future, and with it I shall shake the ever-shifting foundations of mutant kind forever." So what exactly has Strife given him? What has he given Scott and Jean away for? We'll discover later on in the crossover. But what he's expecting and what he gets. And then we switch scene again to somewhere over Texas, West Texas as it turns out. And the IPAC, the ship, the transport ship that they stole from S.H.I.E.L.D. and that is carrying the New Mutants, not the New Mutants, but X-Force, this half team of X-Force, back to the other team in New Mexico, is basically is falling out of the sky because of the damage. Havoc did it at the end of X Factor number 84. So Sam asks Richter here to use his vibratory waves along the lines of their descent to slow the ship down and prevent them slamming into the ground. So Richter uses his powers there. Pretty dynamic anchor image here by Andy Kubert and Pennington again, and it works. The ship is totaled, but their communication systems are still online. So basically, Sam wants to get the other half of the X-Force team to them before the X-Posse hunting them tracks them down to the crash site. And then we switch scenes, intriguingly, to Egypt and to a type of pyramid here, where we're told by the narrative caption, millennia ago the ancients came to this place to worship, beseeching distant gods for guidance and succor to ease their troubled lives. But those ancients are long dead, their gods dust, and for centuries all has been silent in Bani Manza, until now, of course. So the wall of this tomb is blown out, and this hand emerges, and who is it? There's 9 supplicants of a new religion, 9 mutants called the Dark Riders. These are servants to their god, who turns out to be Apocalypse, yes, but he complains that they've woken him too early. Why is Apocalypse being awakened in an unfinished state of organic coherence? So, as far as everyone was concerned, the X-Men anyway, and Cyclops in particular, Apocalypse had been killed, destroyed, back in, excuse me, back in X-Factor 68. But it seems that he has a means of regenerating, healing himself, and his Dark Riders have pulled him out of this regenerating pod or sarcophagus, and he's not happy, but they explain that machinations are being performed against the children of the X. Summers, that meaning Professor X, Summers and Grey have been kidnapped. The deed was performed by your vassals and in your name. So then we get this interesting little ethical moral debate aboard the Blackbird with the blue team jetting off to in the wake of X-Force's IPAC ship. And in the narrative caption, we have, as I said, like this theme of an ethical debate floated. The irony is not lost on the X-Men as their Blackbird craft flies over the skies of the Midwest towards a confrontation with X-Force. Hasn't the area of the United States below them always been called the heartland of the country, a place the politicians laud for its higher values and greater moral integrity? Ironic then that the fight they face is, in many ways, one of values, one of morals, a fight against the next generation of mutants to determine whether the methods they are choosing in their pursuit of Xavier's dream are right or wrong. So this moral, ethical debate between the methods of X-Force versus the more traditional X-teams, in particular the X-Men, of course. And Havoc here in particular saying, why do I get the feeling the kids in X-Force have nothing to do with the agenda Cable has established? So Havoc having a hunch that X-Force really isn't responsible and has nothing to do with the assassination attempt on Professor X in Central Park. And then we get this little debate here flagged by the narrative captions between Reign and Gambit, where they're arguing about whether ends justify the means or not. And Gambit says to Reign, hard times, Wolfsbane, require hard methods. And she says, Cable took it upon himself to shoot the professor and you defend him? How can you be so indifferent? Gambit, the realist, says merely separating the soldiers from the generals is all. So, and Lorna says, and I wonder how the soldiers could let the general turn them this cold, this hard. But Wolverine interrupts and says, maybe it ain't Cable that's turned them this way, darling. Maybe it's just the way of the world that did it. Maybe the dream is dead. Maybe we should all stop pretending it ain't. So we've got Gambit smoking here and Wolverine lighting up aboard the Blackbird. So clearly a smoke 'em if you got 'em policy on the Blackbird at this juncture, yes. No longer the case since Joe Quesada banned smoking in Marvel Comics. Nice anchor image here of Wolverine breaking the panel border, but nicely done. Also, something else I want to note in relation to the art on this page is Mark Pennington's rendition of hair. So we've got the arm hair here, and we've got the stubble on Alex as well. Very different from the way that Scott Williams would have done this and was so influential on subsequent inkers. So Pennington doing it a very different way in these panels. But it's an end to the debate because they're about to land. Havoc tells them that X-Force's ship went down near the Texas-New Mexico border, and he thinks they're sitting ducks, so everybody's ready now to face off. But we have another shift in the scene, and we're above the planet, and we're told by the narrative caption, somewhere above mankind comes a man who has in many ways chosen to place himself in this high place. The irony being that in order to save his people, he's abandoned them. And so it appears that Cable has been in the future and he's returning to the past, our present, and his ship's computer, Grey Malkin, welcomes him home. and he's dealing with the rigors of time travel here, saying in effect it's like a hangover. And the computer says to him, "You were only gone a short time. 26 days your time, Professor," he says. 11 months mine. You've no idea how hard it's gotten to survive tomorrow. So this is Cable, as it turns out, returning from the future, where he went in Cable number 2, where he took Kane to the future. So here he's coming back. So now the clued in reader is wondering about who was it exactly that shot Professor X in Central Park in Uncanny X-Men 294. Cable asks the computer to fill him in on what's happening, and the computer says current events prove quite fascinating. Jean Grey and Scott Summers have been apprehended by agents seemingly loyal to the mutant apocalypse. An assassination has been attempted on Charles Xavier. He now lies in a catatonic state. And Cable whispers here, this never happened, right? So it doesn't jibe with his memories or records of what happened in the past. So he asked the computer, "Professor, who did this? Who shot Xavier?" "Well, regardless of the illogical nature of the evidence presented, Nathan, it would appear that you did." So here we go. So this is a bit of a paradox, yes. Is it a time paradox, or is it something else that's going on here? We shall discover in subsequent issues. And then we go back to the mansion where Bishop is on guard duty. He's outside the mansion itself, and Jubilee's bringing him a muffin and coffee because he's been out there all night. It's the morning time, and he's pretty grim about the whole situation, not really interested in coffee, but ultimately he does accept the cup of coffee and says to her, you know, it's good. And just at that point, the mansion's alarms go off, and of course Bishop is disgusted. A perimeter breach, how can this be? Someone is inside the mansion. So who indeed could be inside the mansion? Well, it turns out to be Mr. Sinister, of all people. And Bishop blows his way through one of the walls to see Mr. Sinister with Stevie Hunter here, Kitty Pryde's former dance teacher. We haven't seen her since Uncanny X-Men 279. And he's also got his hand around Val Cooper as well, and the professor here in the stasis pod. So as he says, as I've already explained to Miss Cooper and Miss Hunter, I've come not to praise Charles Xavier, but to bury him, in a twist on lines from Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, where Mark Antony says the same, but regarding Caesar. Bury him for the sins of his failures. Would you care to be counted among those sins? Would you care to die for them? And then we switch back to West Texas, and the Blackbird touches down. The combined X-Men Blue and X-Factor teams emerge, and Wolverine says he can smell the X-Force, the members of X-Force, but something's not right. What is it? Psylocke asks him, and Wolverine says, not sure. I know most of their scents, but they're muted, like they're ready for us. Are you saying these children plan to ambush us? Wolverine says, stop thinking of them as kids. We're up against soldiers here. So Havoc charges up, and then Wolverine just can't tell exactly where they are, because they're either masking their scents or standing downwind on purpose, just as Psylocke gets blasted by Sunspot, as it turns out. And then they find themselves facing off against a full-strength X-Force team. So Cannonball says, we don't want to fight a fight, folks, but as you can see, if that's the choice you want to make, X-Force is more than ready to give you one. So again, nice anchor image here at the end of Kubert, giving us the full assembled X-Force team. And our promises for subsequent issues: X versus X, Bishop versus Sinister, Cyclops and Jean discover a startling secret. In the next part of X-Cutioner's song, X-Force number 16. So there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on X-Men number 14, part 3 of X-Cutioner's song, Andy Kubert's first issue as regular penciler on the series. If you liked the video, please do so. Hit the like button in YouTube. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.